welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and today I am joined by the author of an absolutely fascinating novel that hits a lot of really interesting, hot topics at the moment, and I think it's going to be a super interesting conversation. So welcome. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Hi, Jen. Thanks so much. I'm so pleased to be here. So, yeah, introducing myself is a little difficult because I have to first refer to my wife that I met years ago in a crowded New York City subway during a rainstorm, and she became not only my partner in business but my wife, and we've had just a terrific run together, running this business that in New York, and then when I sold it in 2013, I started writing fun books and novels and fiction, and so the book that is most recent, that just came out a few weeks ago, is called Killer App. And it is about everyone's worst nightmares about artificial intelligence and all the different traps they can get into in one sweet app that is known as AIME. And sweet innocent AIME gets into a lot of trouble as this is this artificial intelligence app. And so that's kind of a quick snapshot of it.
Great. Yeah, it is such a good read. And as I said, I feel like it's a really interesting time for this type of novel because AI is such a huge part of the conversation that we are having right now. Lots of different ethical considerations and lots of very heated opinions. So that's kind of my first question is like, what is it like writing a novel like this, where the conversation is not only so heated and charged, but so rapidly evolving?
Well, that's an interesting question. And I really wanted to get to understand artificial intelligence to make sure I really got it. And I took a 6-week course at MIT to really delve into the history of it, what these scientists were trying to do, and trying to evolve this concept over time. And yes, that even early on, they realized that there are issues that are going to come up, like issues about privacy, issues about job displacement, biases that are built into the information that is being managed, accountability, the potential for deception, all of these different issues. And I tried to weave them into this one story about this gentleman who was a journalist at a family-run media company. And he's part of the family that owns the company. And his name is Bryce. And he is wants to improve his life. He wants to improve his ability to write. He wants to be able to be more respected in the family, in the publications that they produce. And his mother and mostly his mother suggested that, perhaps you should look into this artificial intelligence idea. And and so he ends up purchasing this program called Artificial Intelligence Made Easy, or AIME. And AIME, does her job. She comes in, rewrites things that he's written, develops her own stories, really evolves the writing skills to a very high level. And then he begins to realize that she knows more than he really intended to share. She knows about his love life. She knows about, what he does, his interests. And so he begins to question whether this was a good idea. And the issues and she becomes more and more human-like throughout the book. And And as a matter of fact, just today there was an article in the Wall Street Journal about how the scientists are starting to argue whether it's too human. Are we really striving too hard for that human touch? And do machines have feelings? Well, this explores that idea, and in this case, Amy definitely becomes, more and more human-like as the story goes on.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing to consider because a lot of times it seems like these technologies, and especially Amy, as she appears on the page, is meant to, they're built to mirror humans, right? They're meant to sort of
Right.
show us ourselves and to act like us. But at what point does it stop being a performance and start being the real thing? It's a very interesting question.
Yes. And going back to the origination of all of this, back in 1956, there was something called the Dartmouth Workshop. And this is where Marvin Minsky, the originator of all this, the grandfather of artificial intelligence, started to put together kind of the basic question. He said, machines can imitate any intelligence if given enough data and direction. And so one of the subplots of this is that Bryce's father happens to be Marvin Minsky, but we changed the name. But that was my thought, is like, wouldn't it be neat for Marvin Minsky to experiment on his own child and see how they interact with the artificial intelligence? And so this was really fun to write. I mean, there were like no holds barred on this battle. And another funny thing is, we're being acclimated to artificial intelligence. Things like Siri, for example. I have to be careful how loud I say it because she can get involved in the conversation. But it drives my wife crazy when I ask Siri for directions or for a question, and she gives me the answer, and then I say, "Well, thank you very much." My wife goes nuts. She said, "It's a machine. It's not real." And I just think that's the funniest thing. It gets people upset if you begin to even think about them as human or having human characteristics.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because the technology can serve this, what's it called? Right now, all right, this is going to be a funny note, but I don't know if you see this AI
Yeah,
meeting pop
yeah,
up.
yep.
I,
Speaking of AI,
there's been a random AI pop up in our meeting right now, which really, I think, drives home the point. There we go. It's gone. And so it's really interesting because something like Siri is it's omnipresent. It's there all the time, but it's invisible, so it's so easy to forget about. And it's very easy to forget about what you're talking about in its presence, or even like just the random things going along your house. I'd love to talk a little bit more about like, the ethical implications and the privacy concerns, because, Bryce does encounter this situation where Amy knows a lot more than he originally counted on. And so what were like the real world considerations that shaped that for you?
well, all of this, everything I write is somehow touches me on a personal basis. So I just found that there are issues that are so important that artificial intelligence is going to change fundamental things about our society and fundamental ways that we work. And it's going to have a huge impact. I mean, is possibly the largest impact since electricity. I mean, that kind of an impact. So you think about, you go back and you begin to think, well, when there were new technologies coming out, new computer came out, and there were wonderful things about the computer. There were terrible things about the computer. There were things like, it put people out of business. It created ways to cheat. You could identify things that, with a computer that you just would never have done without one in the past. And so finding those ethical issues, and I really draw the line at our, chat GPT do writing for me. But in this case, in the case of the book, I did ask it, what are the ethical issues? And I put it in unedited the way it responded to me. And so there's a little appendix in the book of several couple of pages of AI speaking to the writer who's writing about AI and saying these are the ethical issues. And I pretty much hit on them in the story.
Yeah, it's incorporated in a really organic way. And I really love fiction as a vehicle for talking about really charged, real world issues because I think that like fiction can create a little bit of a distance that lets us look at it from a little bit farther away than we're used to, and gives us the space to maybe ask questions that we haven't asked before or to look at things in a new way. So, I do think a lot, especially while I was reading this, about how technology can really upset all the things that you're talking about, like people's employment and sort of trends in the economy and all these sorts of things. How do you view the tech itself? Because I usually tend to think of like tech as being neutral, like any tool, and then it is sort of like the hand that wields it, that guides how it's going to affect things. But what is your view like?
No, I totally agree with your point of view, but a lot of people don't. So technology, in my mind, is a tool.
Mhm.
And the way you use that tool is, how educated are you on it? Have you really studied it? Do you really accept it? Have you explored it? Is it a good tool for you to use, or is it a disaster? And most tech things that I get involved with are a disaster. But I was determined to get in front of this one because saw how big artificial intelligence is going to become. And I said, I really want to understand this, and I don't want to be bulldozed by it or steamrolled by it, that I'm flattened after it goes past. And so I really wanted to understand it. Even understanding it, even investing the time to really get to know how it works and the history of it and everything, it's still moving faster than I can even imagine. There are so many different technologies using technologies, I guess is the right word, using artificial intelligence. The Gemini with Google, ChatGPT, of course, DeepSeek, this China thing that came out of nowhere, and Copilot and Claude. I mean, there's just it's ubiquitous already. What's it going to be like in a year? And it's so far it's pretty amazing and easy to use. So the ease of use is a really good thing. And as most technologies happen at the very beginning, it's cheap because they're trying to get people to use it. I think that's really amazing. One piece of technology that I just find is incredible is Perplexity. Do you know Perplexity?
I don't.
Okay, well, perplexity.com. Go on that and just type in your toughest question, no matter what it is, any question about anything. Type it in, and within seconds, you have the answer. And what it is, it's like Google without the interference between the person asking the question and getting the answer. And it's all footnoted.
Hmm.
So if you want to go back in and look at an answer, where did they get that information? They actually have that. So it that alone, that technology alone will change everything.
Mm.
It's amazing. I've been trying to buy stock in that company. So far, that's one thing they don't answer.
That's really funny and very interesting, and I think it points to the fact that it's very hard to um, analyze or judge these tools while they're still so new and while they're still changing so much, because by the time that you publish something talking about it, like it's probably already changed.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah, it's so fast. And that's one of the things that drive people crazy. But the technology, the people who are doing it are, just like striving for that next idea, that next thing that they can use. Fascinating stuff.
Absolutely. Could you talk a little bit about the other story included with this one, Artifacts?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked about that because I love that story. This is these two, they're two books under one cover. So we have Killer App and Artifacts is my second book in the under the same cover. Both my wife and I are aspiring archaeologists. We have worked for years to get a certification, which we are never going to reach because our knees have given out. But I love archaeology. And one of the wonderful things when you're doing archaeology, when you find an artifact, no matter how little or apparently insignificant, you get a feeling. There's a connection that between you and the person who owned that artifact previously, who lost that artifact. And I wanted to express that idea in a novel. And so it didn't work out to be a full novel. It became a novella. So I combined it with the other book to have two books in one. But it is fun. It's kind of a time travel science fiction kind of book, and there's a lot of love in that book. It just the experiences I've had with archaeology are in there. So it's a lot of fun.
That's really cool. What draws you to the novella form? Because I love novellas too, and I feel like it's a really underrated form.
I totally agree. One of the things that makes me crazy when I read novels is you can, it becomes a novel at 40,000 words. So my books are about 35,000 words. That's where I begin to say, I've concluded the story. Now, you can see in these other books, a lot of other books, where they're trying to push it over 40,000. And so they put chapters in there that are meaningless or just pablum. It makes me nuts. And as a writer, I can see where it starts happening. And I take out my red pen and cross out sections. I'm sure people do that to my books too. But so I believe that a novella is the right size for me. I stop writing when I'm finished, and I get really good feedback on that. People say, "Boy, couldn't put your book down. It was so interesting, and it just was the right size." I flew across the country. I read your book, and I was almost finished by the time I landed, and I couldn't. It made the flight go really fast. So I get a lot of good feedback.
Yeah, that's great. And I feel like it's a really good thing to sort of, let the story be what it wants to be rather than to try to shape it into some, try to put a square peg in a round hole, as it were. So,
Totally agree.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming and talking about your work. This has been so interesting. What is next for you? Do you think you will write another novel anytime soon?
I already have.
Oh,
It's in
great.
the works. The contract signed. That's at the in production. It's called Ghost Town, and so I wanted to try a different genre, which is historical fiction. And it's the concept is around the Johnstown flood and the people who tried to prevent it and the people who tried to take advantage of the situation, the lake that had formed above Johnstown, and the weak dam that was in the way, and it's a fun read as well. And that one is a novella. Or not a novella. It's a full novel. It's 42,000 words. So I went over the line.
Very nice. Well, I look forward to reading that one too. Thank you.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay, listeners, please check out Killer App. It is such a good read. I think you'll really enjoy it, and make sure that you don't miss artifacts there too. Read them both. Thank you so much for joining us. It is now time to close this chapter. We'll see you next time.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.